Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rono. Senator Cott.
Mr. Chu, let's cut straight to the chase. Is TikTok under the influence of the Chinese Communist Party?
No, Senator. We are a private business.
Okay, so you can see that your parent, ByteDance, is subject to the 2017 national security law, which requires Chinese companies to turn over information to the Chinese government and conceal it from the rest of the world. You concede that, correct?
Senator, the Chinese
That's no
business.
question. You conceded it early.
Any company that does, any global businesses that does business in China has to follow their local laws.
Isn't it the case that ByteDance also has an internal Chinese Communist Party committee?
Like I said, all businesses that operate in China have to follow their local law.
So your parent company is subject to the national security law that requires it to answer to the party. It has its own internal Chinese Communist Party committee. You answer to that parent company, but you expect us to believe that you're not under the influence of the Chinese Communist Party?
I understand this concern, Senator, which is why we built Project Texas.
It was a yes or no question. Okay. Well, you used to work for ByteDance, didn't you? You were the CFO for ByteDance?
That is correct, Senator.
In April 2021, while you were the CFO, the Chinese Communist Party's China Internet Investment Fund purchased a 1% stake in ByteDance's main Chinese subsidiary, the ByteDance Technology Company. In return for that so-called 1% golden share, the party took one of 3 board seats at that subsidiary company. That's correct, isn't it?
It's for the Chinese business.
Is that correct?
It's for the Chinese business, yes.
That deal was finalized on April 30th, 2021. Isn't it true that you were appointed the CEO of TikTok the very next day on May 1, 2021?
Well, it's a coincidence.
It's a coincidence that you were the CFO,
Senator,
that the Chinese Communist Party took its golden share in its board seat, and the very next day you were appointed the CEO of TikTok? That's a hell of a coincidence.
It really is, Senator.
Yeah, it is. Okay. And before ByteDance, you were at a Chinese company called Xiaomi, is that correct?
Yes, I used to work around the world.
Where did you live when you worked at Xiaomi?
I lived in China, like many expats.
Where exactly?
In Beijing, in China.
How many years did you live in Beijing?
Senator, I worked there for about 5 years.
So you lived there for 5 years?
Yes.
Isn't it the case that Xiaomi was sanctioned by the United States government in 2021 for being a communist Chinese military company?
I'm here to talk about TikTok. I think they then had a lawsuit and it was overturned. I can't remember the details.
No,
it's another company.
The Biden administration that reversed those sanctions, just like, by the way, they reversed the terrorist designation on the Houthis in Yemen. How's that working out for them? But it was sanctioned as a Chinese communist military company. So you said today, as you often say, that you live in Singapore. Of what nation are you a citizen?
Singapore.
Are you a citizen of any other nation?
No, Senator.
Have you ever applied for Chinese citizenship?
Senator, I served my nation in Singapore. No, I did not.
Do you have a Singaporean passport?
Yes, and I served my military for two and a half years in Singapore.
Do you have any other passports from any other nations?
No, Senator.
Your wife is an American citizen. Your children are American citizens.
That's correct.
Have you ever applied for American citizenship?
No, not yet.
Okay. Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Senator, I'm Singaporean. No.
Have you ever been associated or affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party?
No, Senator. Again, I'm Singaporean.
Let me ask you some hopefully simple questions. You said earlier, in response to a question, that what happened at Tiananmen Square in June of 1989 was a massive protest. Did anything else happen in Tiananmen Square?
Yes, I think it's well documented. There was a massacre.
There was the indiscriminate slaughter of hundreds or thousands of Chinese citizens. Do you agree with the Trump administration and the Biden administration that the Chinese government is committing genocide against the Uyghur people?
Senator, I've said this before. I think it's really important that anyone who cares about this topic or any topic can freely express themselves on TikTok.
It's a very simple question that unites both parties in our country and governments around the world. Is the Chinese government committing genocide against the Uyghur people?
Senator, anyone, including, you can come into TikTok and talk about this topic.
I'm asking you,
or any topic that matters to you.
You are a worldly, cosmopolitan, well-educated man who's expressed many opinions on many topics. Is the Chinese government committing genocide against the Uyghur people?
Actually, Senator, I talk mainly about my company, and I'm here to talk about what TikTok does.
Yes or no? You're here to give testimony that's truthful and honest and complete. Let me ask you this. Joe Biden last year said that Xi Jinping was a dictator. Do you agree with Joe Biden? Is Xi Jinping a dictator?
Senator, I'm not going to comment on any world leaders.
What? Why won't you answer these very simple questions?
Senator, it's not appropriate for
you
me as a
scared?
businessman to comment on world leaders.
Are you scared that you'll lose your job if you say anything negative about the Chinese Communist Party?
I disagree that. You will
Are you
find
scared
content
you'll
that
be
is critical of
arrested
China on our
and disappear
platform.
the next time you go on? Are you scared that you'll be arrested and disappear the next time you go to mainland China?
Senator, you will find content that's critical of China and any
All right.
other country freely on TikTok.
Okay. Let's turn to what TikTok, a tool of the Chinese Communist Party, is doing to America's youth. Does the name Mason Edens ring a bell?
Senator, you may have to give me more specifics if you don't mind.
Yeah, he was a 16-year-old Arkansan. After a breakup in 2022, he went on your platform and searched for things like inspirational quotes and positive affirmations. Instead, he was served up numerous videos glamorizing suicide until he killed himself by gun. What about the name Chase Nazca? Does that ring a bell?
Would you mind giving me more details, please?
He was a 16-year-old who saw more than 1,000 videos on your platform about violence and suicide until he took his own life by stepping in front of a plane or train. Are you aware that his parents, Dean and Michelle, are suing TikTok and ByteDance for pushing their son to take his own life?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Okay. Finally, Mr. Chu, has the Federal Trade Commission sued TikTok during the Biden administration?
Senator, I cannot talk about whether there's any
Are you
ongoing...
currently being sued by the Federal Trade Commission?
Senator, I cannot talk about any potential lawsuits.
I didn't say
whether they happen
potential,
or not.
actual. Are you being sued by the Federal Trade Commission?
Senator, I think I've given you my answer. I
The
cannot
answer
talk
is
about.
no. Ms. Yacarino's company is being sued, I believe. Mr. Zuckerberg's company is being sued, I believe. Yet TikTok, the agent of the Chinese Communist Party, is not being sued by the Biden administration. Are you familiar with the name Christina Kafara?
You may have to give me more details.
Christina
Senator.
Kafara was a paid advisor to ByteDance, your communist-influenced parent company. She was then hired by the Biden FTC to advise on how to sue Mr. Zuckerberg's company.
Senator, ByteDance
Public
is a global
reports-
company and
public
not
re-
a Chinese Communist company.
Public reports
It's owned by global
indicate-
investors.
Public reports indicate that your lobbyists visited the White House more than 40 times in 2022. How many times did your company's lobbyists visit the White House last year?
I don't know that, Senator.
Are you aware that the Biden campaign and the Democratic National Committee is on your platform? They have TikTok accounts?
Senator, we encourage people to come on
Which,
to
by
create
the way,
organic,
they won't
authentic content.
they won't let their staffers use their personal phones. They give them separate phones that they only use TikTok on.
We encourage everyone to join, including yourself, Senator.
So all these companies are being sued by the FTC. You're not. The FTC has a former paid advisor, your parent, talking about how they can sue Mr. Zuckerberg's company. Joe Biden's reelection campaign, the Democratic National Committee, is on your platform. Let me ask you, have you or anyone else at TikTok communicated with or coordinated with the Biden administration, the Biden campaign, or the Democratic National Committee to influence the flow of information on your platform?
We work with any creators who want to use our campaign. It's all the same process that we have.
So what we have here, we have a company that's a tool of the Chinese Communist Party that is poisoning the minds of America's children, in some cases driving them to suicide, and that at best the Biden administration is taking a pass on, at worst maybe in collaboration with. Thank you, Mr. Chu.
Thank you, Senator Cotton. So we're going to take a break now. We're on the second roll call. Members can take advantage of it if they wish. The break will last about 10 minutes. Please do your best to return.
I'd like to call up my amendment OLL 21432. This amendment goes directly to the question that Senator Kennedy was raising, and both of the sponsors of this bill have repeatedly represented that participation would be voluntary, that it was not mandatory. What this amendment does is it makes clear that that's the case, and that it is the case for employees as well. So this amendment does two things. It, number one, says that an employer can't report on an employee's demographic characteristics without that employee's consent. That it's up to the employee whether that information will be reported. And then secondly, it says that the employer cannot take adverse employment action against the employee if he or she chooses to deny consent. And so this amendment, both of the sponsors have argued eloquently that this should be voluntary. Well, this amendment ensures it's voluntary not just for the CEO, but for the individual inventor or researcher.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Hirono?
Voluntary means voluntary. That's it. So it's very clear that no employer can force the employee who happens to be part of a patent application to disclose anything. That's voluntary. So your amendment, Senator, adds additional unnecessary requirements that have no practical benefit. Voluntary means voluntary.
If I could ask Senator Hirono, what additional requirements that have no benefit?
Oh, the requirement to get an express consent
You just said it was
from
voluntary.
the individual.
But you just said it was voluntary. So
So why does there need to be an express consent if the employee doesn't, if the employee doesn't want to participate, disclose that information, doesn't have to do so?
How is something
Why is there a
voluntary
need
if
for
there's
an
not
express consent?
And is it an unnecessary protection to protect the employee against discrimination and an adverse employment action? Why is that unnecessary?
It's voluntary, so any employer who will take action against an employee based on something that is a voluntary action on the part of the employee, I would say that employee probably has some other kinds of actions to pursue.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Senator Kennedy and then Senator Leahy.
I think we have unity and confusion here. It's either voluntary or it's not. Now, and I'd like to vote for this if it's voluntary. But I don't see the harm in Senator Cruz's amendment. The holder of the patent either gives consent or she doesn't. Now, she has to give informed consent, I assume. That means they have to tell her it's voluntary. But I don't understand what we're arguing about here.
Senator Kennedy, the person who is involved gives consent by disclosing the information. That is consent.
But if I'm a patent holder.
This is not like some operation that you have to give informed consent on.
But
It's totally voluntary.
But you said, Senator, I'm really trying to understand why you're disagreeing with Senator Cruz's amendment. If it's voluntary, if I'm a holder of the patent, and you come to me and say, Kennedy, do you want to disclose? And I say, no. That's what Senator Cruz is giving me the right to do. And it would seem to me if it's voluntary, as you say, and I believe you, Maisie, what's the problem?
The problem is that this amendment is not necessary. If the employee does not want to disclose that information as part of a patent application where this information, by the way, is kept totally separate, that information is not given.
That's what
and
Fed's
that is
saying.
it.
That's what Cruz
That
is
is
saying.
it. That is the decision.
What's wrong with
So-
belt and suspenders?
Mr. Chairman, if I could mention.
You know, why do we want to add additional language that doesn't add anything to the purpose of this bill, which is simply to collect data that we currently don't have? And don't we want a vibrant patent system where
Of course we do, but that's not the
understand- so
subject,
let's-
Senator. That's not the subject. The subject is
This-
the definition of voluntary, and if there's disagreement between the bill's author and a member of this committee, that leads me to believe that it may not be as voluntary as we would like it to be. And I want us to go full voluntary.
And Senator Hirono, I have to say I don't understand the response that you're giving, because your first response is this amendment is unnecessary because the bill already does it. And your next response is, but the amendment is really burdensome. It can't be both unnecessary
I'm not saying it's
and
burdensome, Senator Cruz. I am saying it is unnecessary. There's a difference.
So if
between
it's
burdensome
unnecessary,
and
why
unnecessary.
wouldn't you just agree to it? If the bill already does what this amendment says, why wouldn't you agree to the amendment? If your argument is your bill already does this, what is the harm of this amendment?
Why are you proposing an amendment that is unnecessary?
Because I want to protect the voluntariness of the inventor.
Senator Leahy.
Mr. Chairman,
We obviously have a disagreement.
I think this amendment is actually.
Excuse me, could we ask this huddle over here to please quiet down? Thank you. Senator Leahy.
I fear that the amendment is in search of a problem that doesn't exist. Senator Rono is clear. The bill makes it clear that disclosure of information on the part of patent applicants is voluntary. Any demographic data collected voluntarily under this bill is going to be kept confidential, separate from the patent examination process. There was a great deal of work.
Nhiều đêm ngắm sao mà ước xin mình bền lâu suốt đời tình khắc sâu. Nhớ thương đầy vơi mộng thấy ai mỉm cười làn môi xinh tuyệt vời để rồi buồn ơi ánh trăng soi còn đó và nghe hơi gió biết rằng mình vừa mơ. Khi yêu hôn như nở hoa say mộng tuyệt vời nắm tương lai trong bàn tay một câu nói thôi. Đôi khi gặp nhau muốn khơi nhưng rồi lại thôi nói ra e ngại mặc theo gió trôi. Hôm nay nhìn xe kết hoa xuôi ngược nẻo đường gửi thư trao cho người yêu vài câu luyến thương. Hân hoan hồn như nở hoa trông chờ hồi âm đắng cay trong lòng chỉ thấy thiếp hồng. Chiều tím không mây đường cũ bước lần về buồn nghe say dứt tim. Nhìn xe kết hoa màu trắng ngỡ rằng mình mơ pháo hồng nhuộm tiến đưa. Lá thu chậm rơi từng lá nghe buồn buồn tưởng bước ai tìm về mở rộng vòng tay đón anh nhưng nào thấy sầu dâng lên tim biết bao giờ cho khô. Nắm tương lai trong bàn tay một câu nói thôi. Đôi khi gặp nhau